I'm absolutely delighted to be here today and take another step in the long-standing relationship between the Special Olympics and Gallup. My name's Andrew Rzepa, and as mentioned, I'm a senior consultant with Gallup. As you can probably tell from the plummy English accent, I'm based out of the London office. I'm going to share with you today new findings in the field of intellectual disabilities. I'm going to analyse the impact of receptiveness upon societies worldwide. I'm going to, I hope, four main things today. The first, to frame some of the great work that you're doing. To secondly, highlight the challenges that we have ahead. Third, provide global data in an area where there's alarmingly little actionable, high-quality data. And then finally, create a platform for leaders to engage with this topic. Okay, so the agenda for today's presentation. First of all, I'm going to quickly cover what are Gallup's worldwide research and methodology. Secondly, how do we measure diversity and receptivity? Third, what do Gallup's data tell us about residents' opinions regarding people with intellectual disabilities? And then finally, I'm going to listen to the panel and obtain their deep wisdom and insights in relation to this topic. Before I do actually kind of press ahead, I want to quickly note that the discussions on receptivity of communities, this is a hurdle which is higher than simple tolerance. The focus is it a good place for the person to live? So, what is Gallup's worldwide research and methodology? It's very easy to trivialize such global studies, so I'm going to take a few moments just to discuss the robustness of the approach we take, the instrument used for data gathering, and also a little bit about the methodology as well. So, Gallup annually surveys 98% of the world's adult population through representative samples. This is through the Gallup World Poll instrument. So, for the past 6 years, we've annually been in the field in at least 100 countries. We're going to be in 150 in 2012. And these are nationally representative samples of the adult population. So that's people aged 15 plus who are non-institutionalized. There's a minimum of 1,000 surveys in each country each year. We upscale that in a couple of countries. So in Russia, it's 3,000. In China, it's 4,000. And in India, it's 6,000. So we ask over 100 questions in order to understand the world's hopes, fears, dreams, and to try and understand global well-being. The average margin of error for this research is 3%. This means that if you did an entire census of the population, you'd have a 95% chance of being within 3% of the figure cited. So, like any good consultancy, we've come up with a model, the Gallup World Path. We basically use this to provide leaders with a framework with which to tackle society's problems. We like to construe it as a Maslow's hierarchy of needs for societies. So essentially, there's three fundamental pillars, namely, low perceptions of law and order and low law and order in the streets, access to food and shelter, so access to those basics, and then finally, robust infrastructure and institutions, so the hospitals, the schools, the roads, the railways. Once you've got that in place, you can start to develop good jobs for people, which is one of the fundamental drivers for high levels of well-being. So giving people that opportunity to achieve a sense of flow and to use their strengths every day. So jobs is on one spectrum of the well-being metric, and community attachments the other. So community attachment's the thing that allows people to take their lives from good to great, as many of you know here today. When you get these highly engaged communities, Gallup believes that you get the conditions for brain gain, or more importantly, lack of brain drain. So the ability to retain the best talents within your community, those people who can really push and develop quality GDP growth within their societies. So the ability to harness individuals such as the Bill Gates, the Steve Jobs, and obviously my English bias, Richard Bransons of the society. So, how do we measure diversity and receptivity? So, as part of the research, it's always healthy to test a hypothesis. So the hypothesis we're going to be testing today is, countries formed from communities who are receptive to diversity are more likely to be thriving economically. So, the more open a society, the better able it is to harness its talents, as eloquently stated by the quote by Landry and Wood. So, to test the hypothesis, we created a Diversity Receptivity Index. So, across the world, we asked the question, is the city or area where you live a good place or not a good place for racial and ethnic minorities, gay or lesbian people, immigrants from other countries? So hopefully this will allow us to solve whether, and to basically work out whether, in this globalized world, is there a competitive advantage to be gained by creating more open and inclusive societies? The data suggests yes. There's a strong correlation between countries open to diversity and those that have high GDP per capita. I suppose there's a chicken or egg kind of situation here. Do receptive societies drive high GDP per capita, or is it related to factors that hang with income, such as education? I'd also like to quickly note that on this slide, I know a number of you have probably counted, there's only 98 countries. We've had to exclude 14 just because we're not allowed to actually survey all of those questions within those countries, especially the ones in relation to sexual orientation, and also other countries don't permit us to actually speak to immigrant populations within their country. So, the openness and receptivity of societies is closely connected with other indexes that track positive characteristics of a society. When we put the diversity index next to other societal goods, we see close connections between civil liberties, free press, gender empowerment, and community attachment. So now, to the question which is closest to all of our hearts here today. Last year, we asked in over 112 countries, over 110,000 people, the question, is the city or area where you live a good place or not a good place for people with intellectual disabilities? So, all the figures cited on this slide are global median averages. Interestingly, there are no meaningful differences by age or gender once you control for education and income. So, education is the main standout figure here. You see a jump in perceived receptivity in communities where people move from the elementary or less education bracket to the secondary education and some beyond bracket, with only a limited perceived increase beyond that. It's unclear whether increased education leads to increased receptivity to people with ID, or whether it's simply a perception of increased receptivity within this population. Globally, we see no real difference by religiosity when education and income are also controlled for. So it's always interesting to see how people's prejudices rank against each other. There's higher receptivity to racial and ethnic minorities and immigrants than there are to persons with intellectual disabilities. It's interesting to also note that sexual orientation is still perceived as one of the big global taboos. We see that acceptance of other minority groups is also highly correlated with receptivity of those with intellectual disabilities. Namely, those societies that are open and less prejudiced to race, immigration, sexual orientation, are more open to those with ID. Once again, please note that this excludes those 14 countries as mentioned.